Hi, welcome back to Detective Story. I'm Mike Hammond. Thanks again for joining in. Really appreciate it. Hope you're enjoying the show and doing well. I'm enjoying doing it, and I really am grateful and um, amazed by all the feedback. So I really, really appreciate it. Today's show, we're going to do another in our series of interviews with some pretty amazing people that I've come across. And the subject of today's show is a woman named Allicia Johnson Niles. Allicia is an amazing woman who has overcome an amazing amount of trauma. Trying not to use that word too many times today, but her father was a lieutenant junior grade in the United States Navy, stationed at Pearl Harbor. And on March 27th, 1976, was murdered by one of his men on his ship. She was 2 years old at the time. Her brother, I believe, was 8. Her mother, who was a direct and honest person, as she describes it, I'll let her tell you all that, but didn't hide anything from them as kids. And so we're going to do this interview in a series of 2. And this one today, she is going to talk a lot about her story and her journey through the terror of being told at 2 years old her father was murdered, and how that impacted her life, as you can imagine. Or maybe you can't, but she'll explain it, and it's quite a story. So, and then on the second interview that we're going to do, we will talk about her journey to find out exactly what happened with her father and the investigation, and how she kind of went toe to toe and then made friends with and has this ongoing relationship with the United States Navy. But sounds like she has an answer, and she has a great deal of respect and affection for our military. As you will hear, she's part of an important group called, with the acronym of T.A.P.S, which is Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, that does a lot of work with military families, particularly military families who've lost loved ones in the military. So it's a really important story. It's a fascinating story, and I'm going to let Allicia tell you all about it. So without further ado, here we go. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Hi, this is Mike Hammond. Let's take a moment from our regular programming for a real talk about safety and security. I want to introduce you to Blue Knight Security Solutions. Yep, Knight, like King Arthur's court. Your ultimate partner in protection. Blue Knight Security Solutions isn't just your average security company. They are a team of elite detectives, investigators, and law enforcement professionals with unparalleled expertise. Especially in this realm, I wouldn't vouch for just anyone, but I confidently endorse Blue Knight because I have seen their skills firsthand. Whether you need real-world investigative prowess or comprehensive security measures for your business, synagogue, church, school, or any gathering place you feel at risk, Blue Knight Security Solutions has you covered. From risk assessment to tailored security plans, they'll ensure your safety is priority number 1. So, if you're in need of real safety, contact Blue Knight Security Solutions today at 773-706-4920 or visit BlueKnightSecuritySolutions.com. Again, Knight like the round table, BlueKnightSecuritySolutions.com. Tell them I sent you. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Detective Story. I'm Mike Hammond. Thanks again for joining us. Again, as I mentioned, I have a really special guest on today, Allicia Johnson Niles, who has an amazing story, as I described a little bit in the intro. But we're gonna hand off to her and let her tell us her story. But ahead of that, I want you to know the Detective Story podcast is a dog lover podcast. We love all dogs. And Allicia has 3 awesome ones she showed me. So they may be coming in and out of the show. So please welcome them as she has to get up and let them in and out. That's part of the, there they go. How about that? Doesn't get any cooler than that. Yeah, so she's got anybody that's worried about her safety and security at the moment should not be. She's in good hands. So welcome, Allicia. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It really means a lot to me.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored. I've become a fan. I've listened to some of your shows, and I'm very pleased to be able to be a part of this. So
great. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So let's just start out from the top. I mean, your story is an amazing one. It's heartbreaking and traumatic and redemptive and beautiful and all of those things. But why don't you kind of give us the intro? Tell us how you come about being the person you are.
a lot of factors go into it. Allicia Johnson Niles. My dad was murdered by one of his fellow shipmates back in 79. I think I'm a little getting off with the nerves a little bit. But that actually is 48 years ago today. I was 2 years old. And so
right. And just let me interject real quick here. So Allicia and I did a little introduction talk a couple weeks ago when we planned this show. And we're doing it on today's date for a reason, right? To honor her father on this anniversary. So I just wanted to jump that in there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So yeah, my dad was murdered when I was 2 years old by one of his shipmates. My mom, very young widow, my brother was a baby. We went back, actually we were living with her parents until my dad's, for lack of a better term, deployment was through.
He was in the United States Navy.
He was, correct? Yes, he was in the United States Navy. Mm-hmm. And he was an officer in the Navy, and this was post-Vietnam, and so it was just kind of a wonky time anyway. But that, we can talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, so the little bit of background about his experience on the ship, from what my mom told me from the time I was a teeny little girl, was that things weren't going well. Actually, she didn't tell me that things weren't going well on the ship until I was a little bit older. But anyway, things weren't going great for him. He had 11 months left in the Navy. He was trying to decide if he was going to stay or continue to be in the reserves. A lot of big decisions to make. And because of the conditions, because of the situation on the ship, he's like, I'm done. He didn't feel safe. It just was, he was done. And so we went back to my aunt's wedding on the mainland in January of 1976. And what they decided, my parents strangely felt good about it. They did a lot of praying. We're a religious family. And they felt like the best thing for my mom and my brother and I to do was to be back with my mom's parents on the mainland while my dad finished his term.
So you guys were living in Hawaii at the time? He was stationed at Pearl Harbor, I think.
Yes, that's right. So until he finished, the ship was supposed to go out. They were supposed to go out to sea. He was done with the Navy in November of that year.
I see.
So, 11 months, it's a long time. They felt right about it. They're like, we'll see what happens. So we packed up our things. We moved back to the mainland. Things were all kind of set up. And my dad had mentioned a little bit that he was concerned about what was going on. So he kind of prepared my mom, like, what if? And then on March 27th, 1976, he was shot and killed by one of his own men, by somebody who he had been mentoring my mom told my brother and I from the very beginning what happened. I mean, not the details, of course. You don't tell a 2-year-old, here, let's get into the investigative report here. But
Yeah, of course.
she, your dad was murdered by a bad guy, or by a guy who had insanity and got away with it. That was a story I knew from the time I was a teen little girl until I was about 30 years old, because that's the story my mom knew.
Yeah.
And so growing up, like, I couldn't ask for a kinder family, kinder mom. But some of the ramifications, it's, you think about a 2-year-old, I mean, even today's society, what do you think? Like, oh, good. They miss the pain of that, right?
Yeah, right.
That's something that's super easy to think of, and I believed it. Like, it's weird looking back on, like, I have some memories of when I was a little kid, like some thoughts that were going through my head. And, the way I saw the world, I can still kind of see back there, is, if that doesn't sound weird, but like,
Yeah.
I was keenly aware of what was going on. I remember being terrified. That's one of the biggest things, is complex PTSD. I was diagnosed with that when I was 35. But I was terrified of everything. My mom would leave the house. I would sit there and pray and hold my breath until she got back, until I heard the door shut or whatever, and I knew she was home. Even today, it's my anxiety about losing a loved one. I mean, yes, it happened, and people are like, you survived it, it's fine. And I'm like, but it's still tough. But like,
doesn't just go away. Right? I mean,
and it's not supposed to.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's supposed to, because
Agreed.
you're allowed to, well, and I'm jumping ahead of myself, because back to the whole, a 2-year-old, they don't remember, and I don't have a single memory of my dad. And so along with, the complexity of the situation, the, dealing with homicide, as that's, and I don't want to diminish death in any way. Loss is loss is loss. Pain is pain. But there's just a different feel when somebody deliberately takes your loved one's life.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot more complexities to that level of grief when somebody dislikes your loved one so much that they deliberately take their life. And I feel like my fears, anxiety is a real thing. A lot of people have it. But I was always on the lookout for dangerous people, dangerous situations. My trust of people is just like,
Yeah, I can imagine.
and so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at 2 years old, you're still developing everything, right? So I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. I won't try and be, but you can just kind of imagine that, your brain's so formative that, that kind of overwhelming fear of losing a parent, and kind of knowing that it was a bad guy. Like, even a 2-year-old, or pretty soon after that, a 2-year-old can start to identify what a bad guy is, right? Because we tell them, like, stay away from bad guys. Don't take candy from bad guys, whatever, so.
Beware the white vans.
Yeah, right.
Stranger
right.
danger.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't imagine. And it brings up a lot of interesting things that, we'll touch on. But so I'll mention this in the intro, and we're going to get into in another episode, because your book, which you're working on publishing, right? Angel in Arlington, is not yet out. And when it is, we're going to have a deeper conversation about the actual investigation, right? I mean,
yes.
When
the book's out and the story's out, then we can discuss it. Yeah,
right. And I get that, because you from a marketing and what do you call it? Not production. What's a book?
Publishing.
Publishing. Thank you. Struggling for that word. From a publishing standpoint, like, don't be telling the story before the book's out. I totally get that. But that's not what today's really about anyway. But I do look forward to that conversation, because I am, as you can imagine, I am very interested to hear that investigative end that you pretty much led, it sounds like. But, so beyond that, let's continue with this. The childhood trauma thing that you're pretty well versed in, now. I mean, you understand pretty well, and that's a interesting and difficult kind of subject and phenomenon in general, right? I mean, because that's not something we think too much, really, especially with someone who's 2 or 3, basically a toddler, right? I think that when you get a little bit older and people start to, you see that kids are articulating and they're understanding things, then everybody could say, oh, this is going to be tough on them, right? But before that, I don't know, in as many families as I've talked to in your situation, I'm a little embarrassed to say now that that's something until you and I talked, I never really thought a lot about, but it makes perfect sense. A little frustrating to that didn't occur to me along the way, but it is what it is. But it kind of left you with this, as you described, kind of lifelong, overwhelming fear that you had to figure out how to overcome, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, not to sound dramatic, but I'd use the term terror. And
Yeah.
it's so funny because my whole life I'm like, don't let your past dictate you. Don't let your trauma be a crutch or anything like that. I kind of I grew up as a perfectionist, a people pleaser, which comes people who have gone through trauma, any kind of trauma. A lot of times they become people pleasers. They're perfectionists. They're a second class person. They're not good enough. They're not doing a good enough job. And the crazy thing is, I was that way from the time I was like, well, I'll show you this right now. This is me. That age. So.
And that is about the time that you told me that one of the last gift you got from your father, mm-hmm. That dress, correct?
But yeah, for the listeners, I've got a frame, which was really cool because I found it at the grocery store, and it's got a little red dress with little blue flowers, and there's a picture of me, and I was blonde, believe it or not, but wearing this red, white, and blue. It's a red and white dress with little blue flowers and holding an American flag. And then the next picture is me.
Super cute.
Thank you. I don't look the same. Anyway, I was a cute kid. Big head, but cute kid. But anyway, the picture on the other side is one thing I will share is I was able to go see the identical twin sister ship, the one my dad was killed on. And this was many years later when I was in the middle of my research. And I was also, I grew up with a lot of insecurities, and I got scouted to model when I was in my mid-20s. And I was 30 years old in this picture, and I was able to make arrangements to do a photo shoot on the twin sister ship, the ship my dad was killed on. So that's what the other one.
Yeah,
that was powerful.
Yeah, I bet you.
Anyway,
I bet you it is.
But yeah.
So you want to tell us about the other picture there, then, please?
The one on the ship, the Turner Joy.
No, the other.
This one, the little girl picture.
No, the other picture behind there.
The man of the hour here.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my dad, Lieutenant Junior Grade Burr N. Johnson III. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
Take your time. I know. I'm asking a lot of you here, so it's
okay.
It's okay. He's a handsome man. Impressive.
My brother looks just like him.
Does he? Yeah.
Oh yeah, he looks just like him.
He's lucky.
He is.
Well, you're a handsome family.
Oh, thank you.
So, well, look, as always, I'm humbled and appreciative of your father's service and the sacrifice that you and your family have had to have made. And look, the truth is, you talked about this. We talked about this. We kind of did our intro, and you feel your father's presence, and you feel him around you. And I think he'd be very proud of the fact that you are using your voice to try and help people and help other people who've survived trauma and have mental health issues. So good for you. Service continues is what I'm getting at.
Exactly. Well, one thing, as you know, you're prepared for this, and so your listeners know, is absolutely 100%. I believe. I want to say I know, but at the same time, I can't. I think that's a little bit too much, maybe. But I 100% believe that I felt my dad's guidance. In fact, I can say that I know. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because of, growing up, I fought thinking about my dad, because society back then, and unfortunately most of society today, is like, oh, they died 2 months ago, move on. You're broken.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's not like you sit there and wallow and hang out in a room full of pictures of them and don't leave the house. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like, it's just, I don't know. It almost seems like there's a lack of caring or a lack of understanding for that loss, and also allowing a place for our loved ones to still be in our life. And that's how that's not how my mom made things happen. That's not how she framed it. That's how I did. That's how I picked it up. So, but yeah, you're talking about like how I was able to accomplish and figure things out. And I mean, spoiler alert, yeah, I was able to find out answers and come to some incredible, crazy resolutions where the door should have been shut. I went toe to toe with the U.S. Navy, and I've got respect. I've got a lot of respect for the military. I understand that there are reasons that they don't say anything. There are reasons, but sometimes they take it too far, like they did in the situation with my family, where we had the right to know what was going on, what happened to the man who killed my dad. But I felt that push from him. And growing up, I mean, I had a lot of things that kind of prepared me. And again, I was saying I didn't allow myself to miss him because I don't have any memories of him. How can I miss somebody I don't have any memories of? That's ridiculous. And also, it's like, I was just this broken second-class person in my mind. And one of the things that made me broken was like I was afraid to do things. I didn't believe in myself. I had all these, deep insecurities and big fears. I was embarrassed that I was afraid to do things that quote unquote normal little kids would do. But yeah, it was almost like I kind of placed myself in the second-class person category where I had to please others. And there's a lot of things that happened growing up. Eating disorder was a big one. Abusive relationships. Didn't date a whole lot in high school. Well, I'll just kind of tell a little bit about that. So, my mom remarried when I was almost 6 years old, and my stepdad is absolutely wonderful.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes,
it's green tea, just so it's family show.
No, you're good.
No. First of all, I wouldn't be drinking this much bourbon or whatever. But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut the moment.
Can I any more influencer? Yes, I've got it's water with stevia flavored fruit punch. So.
Very good. I should have put this in a glass where the color wouldn't show through. I didn't think about it, but it is.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Green tea. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you're in high school.
That's fantastic. So I was 6 when my mom got remarried, and then everybody's like, yeah, you've got a dad and everything, and I tried to feel excited about it. I mean, I liked him fine, but then I'm like, wait, you're changing your last name? What? And I remember throwing this big fit. Don't you love daddy anymore? Well, before that, so some things I'm very, very grateful for. Like I said, my mom didn't hide anything about my dad's death. Like, she told us what she knew. Age appropriate. Age appropriate is not like daddy's in heaven. Age appropriate is like your dad was killed by somebody, in my opinion. Like, little kids are smart. They know when you're lying to them. They know when things are being withheld from them, and they will make things up in their head. And so, my mom was honest. Your dad was killed by someone in the Navy, and we're okay. We're going to see him again. And so we spent those next several years talking every day about my dad. And my mom actually turned her love story into our bedtime stories, which we loved.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was amazing because we do know we're going to see him again. I don't want it anytime soon. I don't want my husband to meet him anytime soon.
Right.
Mom can wait.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't like death, but I don't think anybody does, but I especially abhor it. But anyway, so she got married when I was 6 years old, like I said, and the society is 1970. Well, actually, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I remember getting home from the wedding reception. I was trying to be excited and everything. And I remember getting home from the wedding reception, and my dad's picture, this one, was gone. And of course, because that's what you do. You honor the new dad. You don't leave, Superman hanging up and be like, oh yeah, I was first. Right. But, and I, like I said, you make things up as a kid. You decide what happens as a kid. And I'm like, I can't talk about him. And so from that point until I was about 10 or 11, I didn't allow myself to talk about him. And deep down, so fast forward a little bit, I was going to school, and I was taking an eating disorder and body image class, and they were talking about how between the ages of 8 and 12 are when you solidify your place in the world, who you are, your self-esteem, like, your relationship with other people. And so at age 6, Dad's picture was gone. I didn't get to sleep in my mom's bed anymore, and that made me angry. My mom started having more kids, boy after boy after boy after boy, until I have 6 younger brothers, which is great. They're my best friends now, but like, boy, me, I want a girl. So I turned to food for comfort. And I was a couch potato, and Little House on the Prairie was my best friend, and I was very emotional. And anyway, it's just kind of, between, I was a fat kid when I was 12 and teased constantly, and not trying to play my violin, just kind of trying to portray a realistic story of, a little kid in grief. And that's another reason I'm so passionate about being here and being like, hey, wait, grief is real. And even my brother was a people pleaser. We compare notes now. He was a people pleaser, and he was 8 months old when my dad was killed. And so when I was about 10 or 11, are you okay if I share some spiritual experiences?
Of course. Yeah.
When I was about 10 or 11, I had an especially hard time. Like, I was really, really emotional. I was not nice to my stepdad. He tried to discipline me. That wasn't happening. But anyway, my stepdad and my brothers had gone to his mom's house, like 20 minutes away. And I was talking to my mom, and I told her about a dream that I had when I was little. And I was about 5. And I don't have a single memory of my dad. The first memory I have was when I was about this age, just a little bit older. And I remember walking down the stairs into the basement apartment that my mom had used some of the money that she got from my dad to help my grandparents build for us. So, like 6 months after my dad, I remember walking down the stairs. I can feel the wall. I can see everything that's going on. And I also remember how protective I was, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so I started talking to my mom, and, just somehow, I told her about this dream. So the dream that I had, my brother and I were walking home from my grandma's old church, singing a song. Or no, we weren't singing. We were too young. I was about 4. My brother was about 3. And I was wearing this purple and green dress that my mom made, because my mom made all my clothes. She was just amazing. And up until like I was 6 or 7. So we had clothes. It's just, she was a really good seamstress, and she gave them away. And I remember when I was little just being angry about that. And she's like, I don't have any more little girls. I'm sorry. We tried. But anyway, so I was wearing this purple and green dress, and my parents were holding hands, and they were singing a song. And that was it. And so fast forward to 10 or 11, and I told my mom about this dream, and she's just like, well, do you know the significance of that song? And I said, no. And she's like, it was your dad's favorite hymn in the world, and it was sung at his funeral. And then she got a box down, and it had, I don't know how many times I'm going to cry today.
As many times as you like.
It's going to be a crapshoot.
No worries. I might start crying myself.
Sorry.
Don't worry. No. Oh. Please, don't ever apologize for that.
Yeah, today's kind of, one thing, just side note, like, you never know how the anniversary is going to be. I'm sure you know that with your mom.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah, in fact, when I was in the room with her when she passed, my mother died of cancer. Two listeners who haven't heard that, but I'm in the room with my middle brother and a close friend of my mom's, and my brother's sleeping, and it's been long days. We're in the hospital, whatever, and I'm just kind of half out of it. And her friend said, "Hey, Mike, I think your mom's gone." And so I woke my brother Joe up, and I said, "Hey, Joe, mom's gone." And the first thing he said was, "Oh man, today's my Julia's wife's birthday." I said, and this is typical Hammond. Like we're the Addams Family weirdos, but I'm like, well, it'll be easy to remember this day anyway, you know what I mean? But, so yeah, I get it. I mean, it's bitter and sweet, but you gotta kind of, don't get off track too much, but I keep thinking about this and I want to mention it before I forget it. But I heard Billy Bob Thornton, the actor, he was a great actor, and I heard him give this incredible little speech about the loss of his brother. He lost his brother, and I don't know the backstory at all with it, but he said it changed his life. He said he was never the same person. But he said, that pain, he goes, I'm always half happy and half sad. And he goes, but I don't want that to change. I don't ever want that to change, because that part of the sadness that's there, that's my brother. And that honors him every time it occurs to me, that sadness. And I love that little statement, because I think that's the way you kind of got to get there. In my head, you got to kind of get to the places that you've gotten, and get through the grief, and just absorb it and say, I'm okay with it. Make friends with it, the best you can, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's, I think we discussed this, like closure is the most misunderstood word in the world. I think, right? It just, because I have a lot of people that say, you must have brought a lot of closure to families, and I hope that I helped, I think it does close a door, but closure is too strong a word. It's not closure.
You don't need to bury him again. Like, I've said this before, but it's like you've already lost him once. You don't need to lose him again and again. It's still, I agree, I hate the term closure, but like the thing that comes to my mind is peace. You brought peace to their family. You brought, peace is the strongest term I can use. And also, I mean, when I found out the details of what happened with my dad, when I understood the why, like, it made so much more sense. And it made forgiveness easier. And forgiveness, in my opinion, you know what? We can be, God-fearing Christian, whatever, not, whatever, believe in the universe and whatever's, forgiveness. I forgive because it's a noble thing to do. Forgiveness is a process, in my opinion. And it's like, if you try to force it, you can desire. And again, this is my opinion, Gospel by Allicia. But it's
hit me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, if you try to force it, it's false, and it's never going to sit well with you. You can desire it, you can want it, but like, what you brought to those families from, I can just guess, is an understanding. And that understanding is like, okay, this is the why, this is the how, this is the who. They know a little bit more about that person. They're like, and they almost start to see, they can start to see that person as a human being, which is what happened to me. I was able to see my dad's killer more as a human being rather than this monster. And I can share this because I had I fought these worries my whole life because they were completely out there, because the Navy, they're noble. They don't let bad people go. I had this underlying fear that my dad's killer was on the loose, and guess what? He was. And I can say that because it's in my video on my website, so where I talk about how I found out he really was at large my whole life almost. And that was, anyway, that just kind of goes into a whole other, down another little black hole we can talk about. But
right. That's a whole scary kind of situation in itself, right?
Yeah. It made me fear the Navy even more.
Realization of it, right? Later on.
Yeah.
But let me backtrack a little bit. So can you tell me, like, when did it start to change for you? When did you start to kind of understand that I want to change, this is not working for me? And what was that process? Was it kind of slow and building, or did you kind of have an epiphany? And I know you're very close to your faith, so I know that played a big part in it. But can you just kind of describe how that, at what point in your life, and kind of how it came about?
I absolutely believe that, like I said, our loved ones are with us, but I feel like in my life, there are little things along the way. Like, I really do believe God is not controlling our lives, but he understands us. He understands who we are. He knows us so well that he knows how we're going to react to things. And I really believe that he's setting the stage for things. Back to that story where I was talking about the purple and green dress, when my mom brought down that box, she had my christening dress She had the last birthday present, that dress in there, and she had the purple and green dress and my dad's dog tags and my dad's things. She had that purple and green dress that she made for me 2 years after my dad died, and she didn't know why. And some of the little things scattered along the way, the little nuggets that helped me were times when I would hear that song in church out of the blue, and it's not a popular song. And I'd hear it out of the blue, or I'd be thinking about my dad, or I'd have little things. So it's just like little things where it's just kind of like, I'm here. And I'd have these little thoughts, and I'd kind of mention it to my mom, and she'd be like, that's exactly the way your dad would have put that. And so I was just like, and with my faith, we do believe that our loved ones are with us. But like talking to me, wait a minute, what? This is not normal. And also I still carried that whole, I don't remember him, therefore I can't be sad, therefore I can't grieve. I thank heavens I didn't receive the knock at the door. But when I was 17, I had the opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. because when you think about it, you've got, a stay-at-home mom with 7 kids. Oldest daughter's not flying back to see daddy's grave anytime soon,
Yeah. Right.
But when I was 17, I went back, and my uncle actually took me to my dad's grave, and I was terrified. Like, anybody who hasn't been to Arlington, you've been to Arlington, haven't you?
I have been. Yes, I haven't really been by it. Basically,
Okay.
I've been in Washington D.C. one time. I was focused on the police memorial,
right.
But I did pass by Arlington. I'd like to go and spend more time there. But yes,
I'll tell you where my dad's buried.
Semi-familiar with it. I'd love to know that because I will certainly visit.
Yes, he's buried in Section 1. I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I get there, you can bet that I'll visit him.
Oh, I love it. He would absolutely love it. Anyway, when I went out there, my uncle, I was there with his brother, and I felt very put on the spot. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to cry because I don't know this guy. And, I've heard these amazing stories and everything like that. And all of a sudden, as soon as I saw his name in stone, and like I said, I have these thoughts, well, maybe that's him or whatever. But as soon as I saw his name and hit in the stone, it just hit me, and it was real. And I started just sobbing, and it was the most healing, amazing thing. So that was when I was 17. And then, I'd have little things come up here and there. And kind of one of my, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's kind of a funny story.
If you're easily offended, this is not the right show.
Good point. I think tattoos are beautiful. Okay, I'm going to say that. I don't think my dad did. And the reason I say that is one thing that came along with me growing up, being a people pleaser, and also very spiritual, was I came across as naive. And it's funny because I saw myself as naive. But honestly, I think I was more, I don't want to say I was more aware than other people, but I was hyper aware of my surroundings. I was more cautious. I guess that's a better way of putting it. I was more cautious. And, I talked to people like you, law enforcement, and you're like, that's a good way to be, rather than, oh yeah, just go whatever, be crazy. But I took it too far. But anyway, I felt undateable. Like I struggled with my self-confidence and stuff like that. And I felt undateable. I'm like, oh my gosh, people think I'm just too prissy. And I was kind of sitting there, you might want to cut this out, but I was just kind of sitting outside, and I was skipping church, actually. I was sitting outside the church, and I was daydreaming about my tattoo. And I'm like, I need to just give myself a little bit more edge. And I was kind of designing this tattoo where it was going to have like little bits and pieces of my ancestry, like maybe something Celtic, whatever. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, and this is after years of having experiences, so I'm like, okay, Dad, what do you want? Out of the blue, I have this thought: dirty sailors get tattoos, not my daughter. Like just loud. I'm like, okay. And my father-in-law loves this because my father-in-law was in the Navy, and he just thinks they're disgusting. I think they're beautiful. I think they're meaningful. My brother has one. I love them, but dirty sailors
I'm
get
just thinking in my head, weren't you just like, oh, come on, Dad?
Yeah. Oh, well.
Give me a break.
Fast forward a few years, and I'd had some hard things happen, and I, had a little bit of the less, I had a little bit of my own edge by that point. And I was working on my book, and I was at a retreat, and they're talking about like tattoos and showing off their beautiful tattoos. And like sat there, and I'm kind of like, before I could even, the thought maybe came to my mind, I had this thought. It's just like, you think I've changed my mind? That's hilarious. So, I mean, as weird as that sounds, like with everything that's happened along the way, I mean, that's one thing, again, with the book, it says that I felt my dad's influence along the way, and I did.
Yeah.
There is no way I could have figured out things without having someone behind the scenes knowing what was going on.
So first things first, no tattoos?
No tattoos.
Yeah.
And my husband hates them. So
Yeah, he does?
he does.
Well, all right. I mean, okay, fair enough. I don't have any either, but I agree. I think they are beautiful. I don't have any issue with them at all. My son's not really into them. My daughter is. Yeah. So I'm with you on that.
It's a powerful sense of self-expression. A lot of people grieve with tattoos. I think it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, no question about it. I mean, and it's, again, it kind of goes to, everybody has to kind of take their own journey. And, so was there a moment where somebody explained to you what childhood trauma was and kind of explained it to you? And I mean, how did you become aware of the fact that, that you were traumatized, that you did have post-traumatic stress, and just because you were 2 and you don't remember them, that really is not the critical issue. Was there a moment that somebody explained that to you, or did you just kind of figure it out over a course of,
No,
journey?
It was, after dealing with the beautiful, like, not being able to argue that I felt my dad around, that he was with me, but also trying to navigate how I was going to handle it, without scaring people away, as in dating. There was a guy I went out with. I was 30 years old. I just turned 30. And I was really excited about him. And he had lost his mom to cancer 2 months before. And we went out and we were talking. And, of course, I kind of, my dad was killed, whatever. I don't have the right to miss him. I mean, I feel bad saying this because my grandma, she's passed away. My dad's side of the family, everybody grieves differently, especially in a case of homicide. Like, it's so complex. And my grandma, she had a hard time, which of course she did. Her oldest son was murdered. But I was asking her questions about it because, growing up, I'm like hungry, like, tell me more. I won't tell me everything because I don't have those memories. It's like grasping onto everything. And finally one day she's just like, we lived on opposite sides of the country, but I was visiting her and our visits were few, but she's like, it's not fair for you to ask questions. We remember him, you don't. And that shut me up even more. So to answer your question, here I am 30 talking to this guy whose mom had just died of cancer 2 months before. And, I'm like, well, yeah, I was too young, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at me. I'm like, I don't even remember my dad. So I don't really have the right to those feelings. And he's just like, are you kidding me? He's like, you don't have memories of your dad. I have memories of my mom. I have things, that you don't have. You have every right to miss him. You have every right to be sad. And I'll take it a step further. This guy's just like, you need to find out what really happened. Because he was just like, okay, what happened to your dad? Well, he was killed by a guy in the Navy who pled insanity and got away with it. The end. Where is he now? I don't know. And so that's what made me go, first of all, it validated me. And I'm here to validate anybody. You have the right to, you had a miscarriage when you were 3 weeks pregnant. You can miss that child that, didn't have a relationship. You can still feel that pain years down the road, and you have that right because you love them and they're a part of you.
Yeah.
And so, it was I can still remember him telling me that. And then because I'm a tenacious person and you don't mess with me, I did a Google search and I got to be close with my dad's friends, who come to find out they were still grieving. And it turned into our next podcast.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. I really look forward to that. So that journey of the gentleman that you were dating kind of set you on, that's kind of the linchpin for not only your quest for answers, but your kind of journey to healing. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it was validation. It was permission. Nobody needs permission, but guess what? Sometimes we do.
Yeah. And it's, it's a good indicator to think about, the things that you say to people, right? I mean, but in fairness, like for most people, talking to about grief and talking to people who've lost loved ones is difficult, right? Because it's you're afraid to say the wrong thing. You're afraid to, I have an adult lifetime of talking to people in the worst situations. So to me, it's kind of, whatever.
It sucks.
I just do by feel. Mm-hmm. I don't worry too much about it. I say, what I feel, not what I think people want to hear, because in the end, I've learned some really hard lessons about that, and you just can't fake it. You just got to try and be honest. So good for the point to all that is not about me, is good for that guy to have the wherewithal and the courage to say that to you. And, so then you begin this journey of looking into your father, which we'll get into the next time. And I really look forward to that. I'm fascinated to read your book, and I'm fascinated to see how you pulled all this off. I think it's going to be very, very exciting. I look forward to it.
It's a good story. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. And you got it. My listeners, you guys will be the first to know when I know when it's published. But there's something that I want to talk about, too. I want to make sure we hit on. Tell me about Unlikely Courage.
Unlikely Courage. That came up towards, I'd say like 3/4 into the process of writing the book. And that's kind of a cool little story in and of itself. One of the reasons the book is taking so long is because I'm working with a New York Times bestselling author, and she's a mentor. And just the way we ended up, like, she decided to write my story. She's got some other books you can read right now. One's called, her name is M, as in Mary Bridgett Cook Birch. And The Witness Wore Red. It's about Warren Jeffs. She was married to Warren Jeffs' dad, and she helped get Warren Jeffs put behind bars. And it is a compelling story. The Witness Wore Red. It's Rebecca Musser and Bridgett Cook Birch. And she goes by Rebecca Wall now. So there's that one. She's also, it was right after that we started working on this book. So, and then there's some other, Divine Turbulence is another, Shattered Silence. It's a story about serial killer's daughter. Pretty intense. Anyway, that is the kind of author Bridgett is. And so we started working and figuring things out. And the crazy thing is the story was happening while we were writing it. Like, there's so many things that happened while I was writing it. But it came about as she saw my tenacity, and here I'm this self-proclaimed insecure little mouse, and yet I had this courage to reach out to the Navy time and time and time again, and to dig into what happened to my dad. So that's when it came about, was because it's like I was afraid of my fear almost, because it was such a driving force in my life, and it was what the Unlikely Courage is what helped me to, it came out of nowhere, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to face this, and I can do it. And there's so much power behind it. I think it's like when you think you don't have it, you've got it. You've just got to utilize it.
Yeah.
So
good for you. That's a great kind of message to get out there too. I think there's a whole lot of people out there that don't believe they're brave, that don't believe that they can get over a hump or get out of a relationship that's not healthy, or get out of addiction issues, and they just don't believe that they have what it takes to get those things done. And for the most part, they're just wrong.
Right.
They do possess it, and it's great. So here you sit telling this story of a life of terror and fear, and you stepped right over the top of it, right? And decided, you had your dad pushing you, you had your dad's blood coursing through your veins, but you did it. You did it, right? And I'm sure he's very proud of you. But the fact is, here you are. You stood up and you did it, and I'm amazed by it.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. So good for you in that. And this Unlikely Courage is something that everybody should think about and keep in mind.
Well, sorry, go ahead. Well,
No, please go
another
ahead.
thing with it is I feel like unlikely courage, it's kind of born in trauma. Like you can't really have unlikely courage without trauma. And that sounds kind of like, well, duh, of course, but it's just like it's how you face and deal with that trauma. I mean, it could mean a lot
Yeah.
of different things, but that's one thing that my team and I came up with, which is like, you cannot have unlikely courage without the trauma because the trauma is kind of what wants to hold you back. It holds you prisoner if you
Yeah.
don't face it, look it in the
Right.
face. So
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, I mean, yeah, agreed. And you know, we've talked a lot, you and I, about, the kind of definitions that are put on people that are not accurate or healthy, or and how it bleeds into their psyche and they start to believe it and all that, but it just, I mean, I just want to make this point because people may be watching the show saying, well, here we've got, a woman whose father was murdered and she had to get the answers to it herself, and a homicide detective from Chicago, like, that's a level of trauma that doesn't kind of match the problems I'm going through. That's just not really accurate, right? Yes, you and I have seen a lot, been through a lot, but everybody's battles are their own, right? And everybody's trauma is their own, and yeah, it's pretty severe when your father is murdered, for sure. But that doesn't mean that the lessons that you have learned and that you're sharing aren't applicable to people who seemingly haven't had any of that kind of trauma. But
right.
you know what I mean? That's just not necessarily true. If you people who grew up with parents who had severe addictions and were abusive, I mean, that's an incredible trauma. There's a lot of that type of thing. And my point to all that is, I think your message is broader than just your father was
Yeah.
murdered. You know what I mean? For people. And along that vein, tell me about the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors.
Nice sweatshirt. Tragedy
I like
Assistance
it.
Program. Thank you.
T.A.P.S. And what a
They've got
great
the greatest swag there.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
merch. I guess merch is the term.
I looked that up. That's pretty. It looks like a pretty awesome organization. What would you like to tell me about
Life
that?
changing. So along the way, as far as like with the and I love what you said about trauma. Like, you don't have to have somebody be murdered or see, the carnage that you've seen to have unlikely courage, or to, I mean, it's just like the same thing as people telling me you don't remember your dad, you can't remember, you don't have the right to that. It's like, oh, well, her dad was murdered, so you can't be sad. So trauma is trauma is trauma, whether it be you were bullied in 5th grade because so-and-so, whatever. It's whatever hurt you was you deserve to overcome. But as far as TAPS came along as I was writing my book, and I was on Facebook, and I saw this lady post a blog post because I was just like, I need to get into the military community, rah, 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 because of course I did. I knew I needed to. And anyway, she told me about TAPS, and I looked it up, and it is an organization. It is actually 30 years old now. Bonnie Carroll is the founder and president of TAPS. And when her husband, he was a brigadier general, he was killed in a plane crash in 1994. So she looked around for people who understood her. And, one thing I feel that is awesome about social media, I know sometimes those two terms don't go together, but love-hate relationship, but is that they're communities. They're people who find their people. And Bonnie was looking for military widows, people who understood what she was going through, and couldn't find them anywhere. So she took the money from losing her husband and started this nonprofit. And I mean, last I heard a year ago, it has helped over 90,000 families. So,
It's unbelievable.
And you look up TAPS.org, of course, donate if you want to, volunteer, especially, law enforcement, military, things like that. There's so many ways to get involved. But so when I heard about it, because my dad had died, at this point it was 40 years before. No, I was there to volunteer. I didn't deserve to be one of the survivors, because they do, well, so they've got seminars that you can go to for free. You pay to get there. They pay for your hotel. They pay for food. The National Military Survivor Seminar, it's a mouthful. That's every Memorial Day weekend in Washington, D.C. You don't pay, you pay for your hotel because that's like, that would be a lot. It's a lot. But
Yeah,
that's
sure.
like the grand event. And so I was excited to get involved. I wrote a few, of course, I'm like, volunteer, rah, 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 let me be a voice for your children. Because yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I knew I had a powerful message by then, and I will share that message in a minute. But when I got there, I was there. I'm like, okay, put me to work. And they're like, you're here to heal. I'm like, no, put me to work. And they're like, I'm like, my dad died so long ago that I'm not like these people who are still crying over recent loss. I'm not here, you don't have the fresh dirt on my dad's grave. And they're like, you'll be surprised at how quickly you get to know people that are, you'll be surprised at how quickly you find people who understand you. I'm like, sure, whatever. I turn around, I get my little lanyard, and I, see this girl, this beautiful girl, and she's wearing her lanyard and she works for T.A.P.S, and it says, Navy adult child. I'm like, me too. I'm like, yeah, my dad was, I was Navy. My dad was killed. And she's just like, yeah, well, she's acted kind of uncomfortable. She's like, mine's different though. I don't remember him. I was just a little girl when he died. Wait, what? So that was just the beginning. They have this thing called T.A.P.S Magic, and it is a thing. And basically, Bonnie Carroll, her biggest thing, the tagline for T.A.P.S is "Love Lives On." And here, during this conversation, we've been talking about like how, society wants to put it in a box and be like, okay, you put that box back where we can't see it because I'm uncomfortable. Or you can't remember them. You can't have a space for them. And with T.A.P.S, it's like they're still there. They have a class called God Wings where, atheists, agnostics, like people of all different levels of faith or non-faith will share when they felt like their loved one was reaching out. And it's a way to celebrate. I mean, it's not just God Wings. It's just amazing. And you go, and I think the biggest thing is validation is so key. We talked about the guy, his name's Keith, the one who told me that I had right to grieve my dad. Validation. That's what helped me get started. Validation is what has helped me, and knowing that I'm not alone, that has helped me heal to such a huge level. After I got married, so I got married during COVID. Yay! I like to do things in a big way.
Right. Well, that made it probably pretty inexpensive, I guess.
No, it was still expensive. I still moved. It was
good
still
for you.
expensive, yeah.
I like that. We're going to find a way to spend money. I don't care if there's a pandemic or not.
I have a huge family that couldn't come. They would have helped. They couldn't help.
Oh, yeah, right. I see.
Yeah. But so yeah, I got married during COVID, and then this is something that I didn't like to share, but I started to notice that one thing with post-traumatic stress is you never know when those triggers are going to come up, as you know. And it was me finding this wonderful man who treats me like an absolute queen. And just, he's someone that my dad, really cool story, speaking of God Wings, my first phone conversation with my husband, we met online, was on my dad's birthday, which is March 24th. And so we've been dating, quote unquote, for 5 years. And then the first picture he got, so I talked to him, my husband, on March 24th on the phone. I'm like, ooh, Southern accent, I like this. And then I was flying out to my grandma Johnson's, my dad's mom's funeral in Arlington the next day. And my mom and my brother and I, and this is something that of course does not happen very often, we're sitting at my dad's grave, and I got a little picture. My husband was out on the track. He was running on the track, and he sent me a picture. So he was tangent, but that was on the anniversary of my dad's death. And just a lot of really cool things, like his dad was in Pearl Harbor, stationed in Pearl Harbor, and moved 6 months before we got there. My diamond is actually my husband's mom's diamond that was purchased in Hawaii because that's where his parents met. So there are a lot of really cool things that make me feel like
it sounds like your husband's pretty smooth. He's got some swag.
Oh yeah, he's got it going on. He just waited until I was old.
Or he's just really lucky, and I don't believe that's true. That's
I'm very lucky.
Good for you guys. That's great.
But anyway, with him, so dream guy finally after forever, because old, and I'm not that old, but I'm
Not
old.
old. You're not old, but I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
It always makes me happy when.
But I guess what I was gonna say though was like here it's just like okay, because when I met my husband in person, like I went to New York right before. I mean, I was very like my fear was at an all-time low. And then we got married, and a few little things happened that kind of, COVID for one thing. Also, I was living out west, and we had a huge earthquake the day after shutdowns. And, all these things kind of brought my fear to the surface. So back to T.A.P.S, like I was trying to combat that. And I think it's important for people to know that it's okay if you slip back a little bit as far as anxiety goes. But then I went back to T.A.P.S last year. And again, it's not like it was super bad, but it was bad enough that it was bothering me. I'm like, wait, where's me from 4 years ago? What's going on here? And then I went back to T.A.P.S, and like I said, that validation, I was talking to Bob Delaney. Do you know who he is? He is an NBA ref. He is an undercover.
Oh yeah.
He speaks on post-traumatic stress a lot, but I spoke with him, and he's just like, oh, okay, well, this is what you're. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. That's what I'm going through, and my anxiety was cut in half. And so, that's a really long explanation to why it's so important. But having resources for things like trauma, for things like where you can go back to and be like, I'm not in a good place, and just being able to go back and be able to kind of get that like calm, you're okay.
Yeah, right. So tell me specifically with T.A.P.S. It's like I said, I looked at the website, and everybody should check out this website. But specifically, who is going to benefit from T.A.P.S? Who needs to go look at that? Who would you suggest?
In my opinion, sorry, I'm a good interrupter. If you figured that out by now.
No. It's good. It's good.
Anybody who's had a loved one who served in the military, whether they were ROTC and couldn't join because they died, or anybody who served in the military. I mean, World War II. Granted, I don't know very many people who served during World War II who are still alive.
We're running out of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, my grandma's one of them, and she was young, and she would be 100 this year. So anyway, so World War II, that's everybody had a grandpa in World War II. Not to diminish it, but anyway, anybody who had a loved one who served in the military who passed away, whether it be toxic exposure or non-military related at all. If your loved one served in the military, check out TAPS.org, especially if you're struggling with that loss. Unfortunately, a lot of losses right now are coming from suicide. That's their biggest. We call it the TAPS family, but that's the biggest addition.
Yeah, I can just imagine, because it seems we're struggling with the same thing in law enforcement. I just can't seem to escape it. People are killing themselves faster than we can keep up with, and I know it's true for the military as well. So, yeah, an organization like TAPS is it's incredible that there are resources there. And, and hopefully the message that we're giving is so people understand it's your trauma is your trauma. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be Allicia, whose father was murdered, or the fantastic woman who started the organization whose husband was killed in a plane crash. If you lost a loved one who's in the military because of military activity or whatever, you're grieving or you're at a loss. Mm-hmm. Reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out to TAPS.
And they don't have to even be serving at the time. Like, I've got a friend who her dad served long before any of their kids were born. And, he was Vietnam era and he passed away, and he was proud of being in the military. Or even if they're not, if they served, your brother, your uncle, your dad, your battle buddy, if they served, go to TAPS.org and see it, if they've got a seminar in your area, or just they've got resources like crazy. They've got a 24-hour hotline, because that's another thing is sometimes, one suicide can lead to more, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
for sure. For sure. Well, that's fantastic. I hope a lot of people hear us today and see this journey that you've been on and can help them. And we're super excited about the book. I'm trying to think. Have we covered? Is there anything we've missed? So first, I want to make sure everybody knows your website is angel.com,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Angelinarlington.com, which will also be the name of the book,
Yes.
unless some publisher decides they want something more exciting.
That's fine. I mean, I am not
right.
Totally. I mean, it'll be hard for Bridgett and I to let go of that, but again, we're going traditional, which has got its own set of challenges. But
yeah,
it's, if they want to change the title, they're fine, just as long as the story gets out there, because we're really excited about it.
Well, can I ask this question? And this, if this is out of bounds, I'll
let you know.
We'll get it out. But are you tied in with the publisher right now?
No, we're still looking.
Okay. All right. Great. That's what I was getting at. So you've heard this, and you see what a fantastic book this is going to be. Angelinarlington.com. Reach out for Allicia, because it's still, I wish I had a publishing company. But anyway, I think we've got it covered. I'm super excited for you in total.
Thank you.
It's been great to meet you.
Yeah.
It's been great to hear your story.
I do have one thing to
your
share.
journey.
Oh, I do have one thing.
I'm sorry?
Oh, there's one thing.
Yeah, please. No, I'm not trying to cut us off.
Oh, no. I'm like, I know I kind of get scattered. I learned that's one thing that people say it's ADHD, but I've also heard that's also connected with anxiety. But
you're doing great. Don't worry about
it. Oh, thank you. My biggest message is to the parents, or to anyone, a child who's lost mom, dad, sibling, whoever. And I'm not saying this would have it would have helped. And my poor mom, angel on earth, she's amazing. She did it right to what her knowledge was. But one thing I will say, anybody who's got a child who has lost a loved one, whether they act like they want to talk about them or not, you make sure that there is a picture of, for all intents and purposes, daddy or whoever it is. You make sure there's a picture available, that there's a spot. You get remarried, you want to honor stepdad. I totally, 100% support that, but make sure that there is a picture of their dad or whoever they've lost. And also make sure that there's time that they know that they can come to you at any time to talk about it, because they're going to create the narrative in their own head that they don't have that right, that you're not supposed to talk to them, that it is going to hurt people's feelings. They might think that they're going to hurt mom, who remembers dad, and they don't want to break mom's heart. And so having that sacred space and that open door is the number one thing, in my opinion, that will help kids. Because for one thing, I did learn through, therapy and hearing stories and things like that, is that half of who that child is gone if it's a parent. And if they don't matter, that child doesn't matter. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's a subconscious, very real, destructive belief system that's hard to escape. So there's my little, I want to include that.
No, I love that. And the message is clear. I think it's a really difficult process, right? Because it's like there's two tendencies, and I think the answer probably is somewhere in between, and getting really people who know what they're doing involved, therapists and that. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that a little bit. Even inside of that, it's like, oh, just go to a therapist. It's not quite that simple. Mm-hmm. You have to find somebody that you're comfortable with, and that, or your child's comfortable with. But there's two tendencies, right? Like the one tendency to say, kind of what happened to you, they're too young, it's not going to affect them that much. Or the other side of, telling the kid all the time, you need to do this, you need to express yourself, you need to, mm-hmm. It's like, it's almost always a bad way to start a conversation. You should, right?
Should or need, yes.
You should,
guilting
right.
people into their emotions or out of them.
And I think if I'm hearing you right, and it makes a lot of sense to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, you got to provide a pathway for a kid to be able to express themselves, and then let them and hear it, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of be supportive of what they're trying to express.
Yeah, don't hide your grief. But at this, obviously if you're having a meltdown day, you've got a 3-year-old, you don't want, but still, yeah. I think it's permission. Another part of that is permission to have that relationship, to feel those feelings, and to open the door. leave the door open.
Yeah.
And also, spiritual or not, I just want to really stress that if you think they're there, there's no harm in believing it. There's no harm in allowing that beautiful connection, even if it comes along with tears, to be like, I think my dad's talking to me, or I want to talk to him. I need to feel him close. I'm having a hard day. And then I've had so many beautiful things happen by just allowing that. And I think it's the word allow. If I could use one word for this whole conversation, it's allow. Leave the door open. So,
I mean, I've kind of made it, I don't make a secret out of the fact I'm not a particularly religious guy. I am not an atheist or agnostic either. I don't know quite what all these years and all these things, I don't have an answer. I do think that there, there's something greater than us out there. I just don't. For me personally, it's a very personal thing. I you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to blame God for all the bad stuff I've seen.
Right.
Or whatever. It's just, it's my personal thing. But I have great respect for people of faith. I really do. It's, to me, it's like, I equate it to people from Texas. I love the fact that people from Texas are really proud of the fact that they're Texans. Mm-hmm. It only becomes a bad thing when, that, and this mostly doesn't happen in my experience, but I'm not picking on Texas, but just because they have so much pride in the fact they're Texans.
Right.
I love it. It only becomes a negative thing when you say, I'm from Texas and I love it and it's awesome. And if you're not from Texas, you're wrong or you're a jerk or whatever. Then it's a problem. I feel the same way about faith and religion. Like, it's all good to the point where, you're bad if you don't see it my way. Right. And so, but where we connect for sure is, I'm not a religious person particularly. And, maybe my life experience plays a lot into that, but I have a great respect for people of faith. And throughout my podcast, I can feel redemption and forgiveness through faith. But having said all that, like I said earlier, I feel my grandmother's blood coursing through my veins all the time. Cool. I feel like I inherited her courage and her humor. She was the funniest human being that I believe that I ever knew. And my father and my mother. But I feel that, and I tell that to my kids all the time. You have this, and we're lucky to have it. And so it's not hard for me at all to accept that your father was pushing you along and is there for you all the time. You know what I mean? So I think that's a pretty good place to jump off.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate it. And I agree with you. Everybody's relationship with their higher power, or whatever divine or whatever is pushing them, it's whether it being within you or God or whoever. I think it's everybody. That's a beautiful thing. We have the right to connect however it's authentic with us. So.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, Allicia, it's been a pleasure. It really has. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a great deal to me.
Thank you. And honestly, you being able to be here today, and I told you earlier, it's been kind of a rocky day, not just for my dad, but other things. But you brought a lot of peace to my day by allowing me to share. So I really appreciate it. So.
Well, I like to hear that. Thank you very much. So we'll end the show then with, what was his rank again? Remind me of his rank.
Lieutenant Junior Grade Burr N Johnson III, or in Arlington, if you look him up, Burr N Johnson III.
Johnson.
Yeah.
To you, sir, and your service, thank you very much. And to you, Allicia, thank you very much. Super excited for the book. If I get a call from a publisher, I'm going to be on the horn to you, right?
Send them publisher agents.
But I got a feeling it's not going to take long.
Publishers, agents, they're definitely, and we're looking for a good one. Yeah. So thank you so much, and thank you for your service and for how well you treat people.
Thank you.
It's really you're wonderful. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really do. All right. Well, then we look forward to the next one. My listeners, hey, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Until the next one, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, there you go. Miss Allicia Johnson Niles. Really appreciate her being on the show. it's a really cool conversation with her, and she's really overcome some amazing stuff, as you heard. I think there's a message in there for all of us, and I look forward to speaking with her again when we can talk about the investigation into her father's death that she had completed and she worked on herself. We need to let her get her book published and get all that done first for obvious reasons. So thank you very much to her for being on the show. To her father and his service, always much appreciated by us. So that's all I've got. I really appreciate you guys checking in. Again, please, download, subscribe, give us a review. We really appreciate it. We are going to be kind of moving back into murder investigations in the next few episodes. We got another guest on to talk about a really fascinating case in Arkansas. Back to some of my cases. So we've got some cool stuff coming up. I hope that you'll enjoy it, get something out of it, and keep checking in. I do want to give a shout out to my friends down at Core Fueling in West Texas, Midland, Odessa. They made an equipment donation to the show here that is really dramatically changed our workflow and just ease of doing everything. So we appreciate that. You guys be safe down there. I'll see you guys soon. Everybody else, thanks again, and we will talk to you soon. Be careful, watch out for yourself, and watch out for each other, please.